Well, hi, everybody. I'm Johanna Schneller. It's so great to be here with you all, even virtually. Wow, that trailer, what a body of work. I'm dying to talk to Deepa Mehta about all of that. But first, I want to thank the Directors Guild of Canada for partnering with the St. John's International Women's Film Festival on this great award. And I want to thank Deepa Mehta for being, just for being you, Deepa. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Johanna. It's a real pleasure. I mean, when the DGC called and said that they're giving me this award from St. John's International Women's Festival, I mean, I was really thrilled. It's great to get a visionary. It's such a great name, isn't it? Visionary. I couldn't even use this. I couldn't Zoom, and I'm supposed to be a visionary. It's sort of weird. Anyway, here we go.
Well, listen, I think you're a true visionary in your films, of course. I mean, you were making films about women's rights and BIPOC people and queer people from the very beginning of your career. Your characters and your themes straddle all worlds, and yet they speak to each of us personally, to our universal humanity. But I also think you're a visionary in the way you've lived your career. I mean, I don't want to get all women-centric here, but I've interviewed a lot of directors who are women, and I've heard some stories about working in countries where the crews are not accustomed to taking orders from women, for example, some of those countries right here in North America. I've also heard about how difficult it is for women to go from film to film, no matter how successful their previous film was. One director told me she felt lucky she was able to make 6 films in her whole career. And just to give everybody a little bit of context, when you say a director who's a woman, lots of people think Catherine Bigelow, for example. She's made 11 films. Deepa, you've made 12. And that matters because directors, like all people, get better as they do their job. So if you get to make like 30 films like Martin Scorsese, you're going to get pretty good at it and someone's going to call you a genius. But let's think for a second about who gets to be called a genius and who doesn't in our culture. So I'm going to call you a genius. Hi, Deepa.
But what you're saying is so true. I mean, it's not easy for women, and to be women-centric is absolutely essential in my point of view. And I think that it is tough to be a woman in any sphere, but in film, it is so totally a boys' club. I mean, you just look at who goes to Cannes every year. I mean, or how many women get there. There are lots of women actors, but are they directors? No, very few. And that's the reality of this business. So I think that if we don't talk about the fact that it is a boys' club, even to this day, people think that Me Too happened and everything has changed, but it hasn't. That's the reality. Mm-hmm. We can call out people who have been abusive to us, but has it changed our career? In fact, it's made it perhaps more difficult.
Interesting. So, well, I want to talk about your latest film, Funny Boy. I feel like it's archetypal you, a passionate love story set against these sweeping historical events. In this case, a gay boy coming of age in 1974 Sri Lanka as unrest is breaking out between the Tamils and the Sinhalese. I think of it as Romeo and Romeo. And I was at the screening with you. We were socially distanced, of course. And afterwards, you said to me that you feel like you'd come full circle from Fire at the beginning of your career, a love story between 2 women, to Funny Boy right now. So why do you say that? What is full circle for you about that?
Well, Fire was, I mean, on a very sort of obvious level, Fire was about 2 women who were in love with each other. And but the background is, society and patriarchy. How does that play and an emotional commitment to whether it's between a man or a woman or 2 boys or 2 men or 2 women, it is frowned upon. And society actually makes it far more difficult for women to make choices, let alone choices about who they identify with sexually. So whether it's a transgender person or whether it's a lesbian relationship, it's very difficult. And for me, even being Funny Boy was sort of interesting in a way because, again, Funny Boy is set in a country. Yes, it's coming of age, but I think it's more than that. I think, if anything, it's about the oppression of minorities. For me, Funny Boy is actually not a very funny film. It is about prejudice. And for me, it mirrors Fire. How do we deal with prejudice as men, as women? That's why I feel we've come.
I have this theory that if you look at a filmography, you see a biography. And looking at your whole body of work, I feel like there's this real engine for you in that tension between prejudice and tolerance, right? I feel like tolerance is such a big theme for you. Is that fair?
It is. It's extremely fair. It's what drives me. I mean, curiosity is what drives me. But it's interesting that everything that I seem to be curious about is about how can we be. I mean, surely we can be. We can have more humanity. So yes, it is about tolerance. It is about, and when I think of cinema as the history of cinema, I mean, what appeals to me most is the humanitarian filmmakers. I mean, whether it's Satyajit Ray or whether it's Kurosawa or whether it's Petrucci Sika, those films made in the 50s and early 60s actually dealt with humanity. And that is, in Trump land, it's, and what's happening in India and with Bolsonaro and Boris Johnson. I mean, it's shocking. So tolerance is one thing that's just being jettisoned out of the window. And I think it's to focus on it. I don't think that I'm doing a message film. This is just what I'm drawn to. And it's usually about being tender and kind.
Tender is a beautiful word. But, as I mentioned, you were making films about BIPOC people and queer people way ahead of the curve. This moment, people are saying a lot of words, the right words, about how they want to be more inclusive, how they want cinema to be more diverse. Do you buy it? And do you think that it's more than just lip service? Do you think this moment will take hold?
I think that the people who started the movement, whether it's Black Lives Matter or whether it's that became BIPOC, I think that they had a sincerity and they really are and continue to fight. But who are they fighting and what are they fighting for? Is that going to change? I mean, suddenly is the police system in the world going to suddenly say, okay, you're Black or you're colored and I respect you? I think it's going to take a long time. And our people, I think some people are sincere. Some people for some people it's tokenism, and for some people it's just it makes them feel good that they're doing something. But I think that some are sincere for sure, but not all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah. You talked about the humanity in your films, and I think that's true. I mean, I think it's fair to say that, like, the epic is such a brilliant use of cinema, the whole screen and one human story against all the events of history. And I feel like you've done epics so brilliantly. Why do you think they're so popular? So moving when you see them? And why do you think you're drawn to that kind of style of storytelling?
Well, I mean, not all the films. I mean, this one is whenever you have, I think, whenever you're dealing with war, whether it's civil war, sectarian war. I did a film called Earth years ago, which is very different than Fire and Water, which was an epic in that sense. But I think the minute you get into destruction of humanity, it's far more powerful when you have it on a large screen, so the impact can be felt more. So I've made, I think, some very intimate films. Heaven on Earth was an extremely intimate film. It was shot practically in one house in Brampton. So there was nothing epic about it. What was epic about Heaven on Earth for me was, in fact, how interior it was and how domestic abuse is so universal and so large, but it's so contained within a body of a woman. And it depends on what you mean by epic in that sense. So when you're dealing with war, large screens, large destructions, it's interesting for me to do, but it has to be for a reason. It isn't just there for, a bomb going off or people killing each other. What's the reason? What's the emotional center of the scene? For example,
right. And that's what made Earth so powerful for me, is that when you do have the scenes of violence, they are intimate. But I wonder if there's a scene in Earth where the train arrives and people have been killed, and I wonder if even just setting that up even just recreating it, staging it, does that get under your skin? Like, are you thinking as a filmmaker? Are you thinking as a human being when you're doing those scenes? Do you let them affect you emotionally? Do they have to make a good film?
It doesn't affect me emotionally, and I wish I could say that it does because it sounds so dramatic. I think I have to be very clear-headed and to set it up. I imagine what it would be like, and then to recreate it, and then that's why it's great to have a first assistant director or last person I talk to after the setting is, of course, the actor. How does the actor fit into that setting? But to create that setting, whether it's the lighting with the cinematographer, it's how do you find an emotional center of the scene is extremely important. But I don't think it's important to get emotional about it because then you lose objectivity. And for me, that's important.
You can't do your work. Yeah. Do you think your style as a director has evolved over time? Have you changed what you're interested in all the different aspects of filmmaking as you've evolved as an artist?
Yes, I have, but not hugely. I mean, it isn't that I've become far more aware of what lighting can do. I mean, and to a scene. And for example, in Funny Boy, we had, I would say 90% of it is natural light because that's what I wanted. Nothing is lit, should not be lit. And the film doesn't call it for, so the strength of lighting is something that I've really grown to admire and realized how important that is. For me, Guy Defoe, who was the first cinematographer I worked with on Sam and Me, a wonderful, brilliant guy. And I had a viewfinder around my neck that was given to me for my first film. And I was sort of looking at 16, 25 millimeter, 16 millimeter. And there was Guy sort of staring at me and saying, he said, Deepa, first of all, you've got the setting wrong. And secondly, if you want a close up, you just say, this is what I want. If I want a medium shot, go for this. And a full will make a wide one. And I was stunned. I don't want to get into the technology of it because like I said, I couldn't even get into the Zoom thing. It's a waste of time. But I can tell you what I want to see. I can say, I really want the figure to be that small and everything else is the landscape. That's easy to see. Right. I don't have to say I want to use 10 millimeter lens or whatever. Who cares? So, but what I have learned, my style has changed. And what changed it actually, Johanna was doing television. I did something for Netflix and then I did something for Apple. And that really changed the way I looked at stuff. And then I did Funny Boy. And what I found was that I learned a completely different language or dialect in a language I knew. And that's what it was. And I loved that. I suddenly realized, my God, I can even at this age do something different. And that was good.
Yes. I mean, that is the amazing thing about this art is that it is evolving. You're constantly evolving. One of the things I've noticed that's pretty consistent over time, and again, tell me if you think this is fair, is that you seem that dialogue in a way is less important to you than the landscape of the face and the landscape of the body and the way people reveal themselves with just their facial expressions, that we can see their inner lives even more than what they say. What we're seeing on their face is their inner life. And I feel like that's a priority for you. Is that also fair?
Well, I mean, I think that that's the power of cinema, right? To show and instead of talk about it. I don't like talky films. There are some films that are extremely dialogue heavy, and maybe they deserve to be, and they tend to be. For me, it isn't that important. I'm sure if I get a script where every word is fantastic, and I'm saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing, this is brilliant," then I would think twice before. It isn't that I'm close to it, but I love. That's why I love actors. If they can perform without saying anything, I mean, that just really shows their breadth. I think it fills up the screen for me. Dialogue takes away from a moment. Dialogue takes away for me from a gesture. or just the lowering of an eye. And I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the many things that you do brilliantly. We've had interviews together over the years more than once. And you once told me that you hate controversy around your films, and yet your films have attracted it. You know, people burned a cinema to protest fire. You had to petition the Supreme Court of India to get it re-released. The government shut down water. The Iranian government pressured the Sri Lankan government to shut down Midnight's Children. Why are your films perceived as so dangerous?
I don't know. It's a bit of a bore, but maybe because I'm a woman. Women aren't supposed to make films that question how women are treated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that a lot of what had to do with the questioning of patriarchy. A lot of the controversy around fire was that there are no lesbians in India. So it's about women. I mean, how dare I portray women or question the way that they want to live their lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you do not shy away from telling uncomfortable truths.
I don't think that I sit there and say, let me find a story that has an uncomfortable truth in it. I mean, I like to tell, what attracts me is stories that actually I learn something through them, which I don't know much about. I didn't know much about what happens to widows in India or what happened to widows in India, though it still happens to a small degree. I didn't realize how patriarchy works with the choices of who your partner is or what you want to do, or what happens the way blacks are treated in America. You know, it's curiosity about how do you get into that world. I want to. So that is what attracts me to a story, not that, oh, this is an uncomfortable truth and that's why I want to tell it. I don't even think that way.
Interesting. Although I did notice in Earth, you know, a character says neutral is not a comfortable position. And that had a ring of truth. I thought maybe that was maybe something that you also think.
I don't. I mean, in fact, I find telling the truth very liberating and very, it's easy for me because it doesn't make me feel uncomfortable or to portray it. I don't even say, okay, this is the truth and it's an uncomfortable truth, so I'm going to feel uncomfortable about it. Or it's easy. I mean, it's you don't have to be so devious, you know, to tell a lie or to tell an uncomfortable truth is actually a lot of work. And I'd rather focus on how to shoot it instead of how to hide it or how to make myself somebody else comfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All right. Well, let's go back in time a little bit now. Tell us about you when you were like, what kind of a girl were you? What was it like for you growing up in India? Just tell us a little bit about what you were like as you were formed, you know, as you became yourself. What interested you? What did you like to do?
I grew up in a place called Amritsar, which is in the Punjab where the Golden Temple is. I'm Punjabi and it's a predominantly Sikh city. Punjab is a Sikh province. And I grew up actually in movie halls. My father was a film distributor, so he owned a couple of, maybe 3, I don't know, whatever, movie halls. And so after school, that's where we'd go and to see him or to pick him up. And I'd always see the first and the last show or the first and last 20 minutes of a film. I remember I was about 6 years old when I started seeing movies. I grew up in movie halls, literally. And I don't know, I think I maybe have told you this. And so when I was older, I said, I really don't want to have anything to do with movies because they were coming out of my ears and everything. Every Friday was so important because that's when a new film opened and my father's mood depended on how a film did, what was the box office on Fridays. So I used to dread Fridays and what opening of a film meant. And so I said, this is something I really don't want to do. So I want to become an academic. It felt so safe not to be so exposed and not to be so vulnerable because of a film. And then later, I did philosophy. And then later when I had an opportunity and I got to work on a documentary film just by chance. And And I decided this is quite lovely. I like it. And I told my father that this is what I want to do. And he just looked at me and he said, okay, if you can remember that there are two things in life that you'll never know about. One is when are you going to die? You'll never know when you're going to die. Nobody's ever going to tell you, oh, you're going to die tomorrow, and you'll never ever know how a film will be reviewed or seen. So if you remember that, then pursue this career, because there are such great unknowns. You never know. There is no formula that you can strive to know that a film will be successful. You can get the best actors, you can get the best everything, and it might not work. So there was that sort of sense of being very practical, which has stayed with me. I mean, it's still, you of course you want your work to be well received, but I'm not surprised when it isn't. Well, I don't take it too personally.
Interesting.
So that's I grew up with movies.
So it seems like there's a lot of directors will do a couple films for themselves, and then they sort of wait for the moment when a big studio hires them, and and then they're launched, but they're not necessarily doing their own work in the same way. It seems to me that you've always been committed to doing your own work. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yes, it is accurate. And, it isn't, and I think that, the stuff that I did for Netflix and for Apple were not my scripts. And it has a lot to do with the scripts one is offered. And there are many things that have been shown to me and are sort of have big stars attached to them. And they don't necessarily appeal to me. And I realize that unless you're sort of like a A-list Hollywood director, A+ list, you can't even change anything. There are a bunch of lawyers generally who actually who are telling you what you should do. And that just doesn't work for me. I don't know. So I'd rather remain small and do the stories that I'm attracted to, or write my own scripts. And, whatever their flaws are, they're mine. So that's okay. I can't shove the responsibility on somebody.
Yeah. Was there a moment when you realized, oh, I want to write my own scripts? This is important. I can't just.
Yes, it was with Fire. And, I'd done a film before that, which was a big film for me. It was a film called Camilla. It had Jessica Tandy's in it, and she was huge, and, and it had the notorious Miramax behind it too. And it was a big film, and a really nice Canadian producer, Christina Jennings, and she liked Sam and me, so she actually trusted me with which was a huge amount then, $14 million, or I don't know, whatever it was, film. But I realized that it didn't do well. It just actually, I think, died in the box office or critically, and I really want. Then I said I really want to do something that's mine. And so I wrote Fire, and it was a very small film, and Telefilm didn't support it. It had no government funding, I think. Oh, it had OMDC, which was the Ontario Creates now, because then Canada felt that unless the film had white people in it or was set in Canada, it was not a Canadian film, even though the director's Canadian. So I learned a lot. I learned that it was very liberating writing your own script, because it's very liberating making your own mistakes, because you're responsible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you're writing, are you writing as a director? Are you seeing it as you're writing it, or do you keep those two disciplines separate?
No, I'm definitely writing as a director. So I write what I see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In Heaven on Earth, you mentioned to me at some point that it was your favorite of your films. And I wonder, this young bride in a strange land, all that snow, was there a bit of you in her? Was not the domestic abuse side of things, but just the strangeness and the discombobulation and the culture hopping?
No, not at all. Because I relate. I mean, I relate to the immigrant experience. I mean, I think that in fact, Funny Boy is a lot more for me than Heaven on Earth that I can relate to. And sadly, it has a lot to do with of having traveled a lot when I was younger, and so Canada wasn't the first place that I'd seen with snow, and so it wasn't that. It was the reason I related to that is that what does happen, how limiting accessibility to anything that Canada or a Western country offers, how limiting it is to somebody who's not white. And as a colored person, I mean, she didn't even know where to go to for help when being domestically abused, because we people don't know. I mean, and I put a huge thing out that that perhaps every immigrant who comes to Canada from any country in the world, from whether they're coming as refugees or whether they're coming, all the women should be given, I don't know, whatever, a piece of paper with the phone numbers of who to call in case they're abused or where to go to. Nobody does that. So there's complete, and the travesty for me is how alone they can be, because your family is not there either. So that's what I related to, being alone and helpless. How difficult that is.
Yeah, there's that amazing moment where she learns about 911. She didn't even know what 911 was, So it's just the smallest, simplest things. Now it's interesting. You have a very successful partnership, both personal and professional, with David Hamilton, who produces your films. Without getting too personal, I wonder if you could just talk about just that work-life balance thing. Like how great has it been for your work to be able to know your producer so well and for him to know you so well? Do you feel like that's been an enriching factor in your career?
Has it been enriching? I mean, he's when Fire happened, I mean, I remember after Camilla, there was not, I mean, I didn't even, I stood I think outside an agency with a script of Fire in Toronto for about 1 hour, and the person won't even see me. And I didn't know where to go. I mean, and I went to Telefilm, and they said, no, it's not a Canadian film. And I went everywhere, and and one day I came home, and David said, what's going on? It's a beautiful script. You should do it. And I said, I don't know how to get the money. He said, let me try and help you. And that's how he became my producer. He just felt that it was so difficult to tell the story that I wanted to tell, because it wasn't a white story, that it was unfair. I should be given a shot. I mean, Fire is not a very expensive film at all, but he and another friend, Suresh, actually really helped raise the money for it. So it's all privately funded, crowdfunded, so to speak. And one of the nicest things that happened was that it did quite well in the box office, that we could actually give money back to the people who invested in some of it, and the cinematographer who worked on it for free. It was so wonderful to be able to pay people back. So that's my relationship with David. David doesn't come and say, okay, you want to do this film, here's the money. He doesn't have that kind of money, but and then many times he says, I don't think that it doesn't interest me, so perhaps you should go somewhere else, and that kind of thing. And the reason it works, I think, when we're working together, like on Funny Boy or anything, is we have a code, if you can say that, or which is, and David set this up, and he says you can't say no for 24 hours, because whenever he suggests something, I say no, and he said, no, you can't do that. Just give it 24 hours, and if after 24 hours you still insist on that you need something or the other, tracks or a crane or something, then we'll think about it. So he's that kind of a producer. He became a producer.
Right. Yeah. That's so interesting. So I do want to talk a little bit about Midnight's Children, because, as a person who says she's allergic to controversy, you must have known that it would be a tricky film. Salman Rushdie wrote it based on his novel, and he was a you know, renowned figure culturally, and then had this massive life-changing thing happen to him. What made you want to take that movie on? Why were you sure that it was a good idea to just go ahead?
It was like, it was just a given. I mean, for me, Midnight's Children is about the country of my birth and what happened. You know, it's about colonialism, what's done to countries, not only to India and Pakistan, but everywhere in the world. And it was like a no-brainer. It's the story of my parents. It's the story of limitations that are put. It's a story of hopes dashed. It's a story of always being told and judged through a white gaze. And that for me was fascinating. It was a no-brainer. I didn't even think about the controversy. I mean, I knew that I couldn't shoot it in India because it's banned in India. But I admire Salman hugely. So I didn't think, oh, he's controversial, that's why I shouldn't do the film. I just thought, what a brilliant writer. And how wonderful to be able to do a book that I really admire.
Did becoming friends with him, seeing what he went through, do you feel like that made you braver in a way? Did it make you feel like the world can't tell me what to do?
Oh gosh, because he's not like that at all. That's not the one that I know, at least. He doesn't walk around saying, nobody can tell me. He's just the nicest man I know. He's very funny and he's smart and he's self-deprecating and he's super smart, but he's not arrogant, and he doesn't walk around with a suit of, like a Marvel hero of invulnerability at all. So if anything, what Salman has, being around Salman has taught me was, becoming a friend of his, has taught me about how important good food is, and that's really, and I get that now, yeah. And how important the word is, and how important it is to listen. I've learned a lot about listening from him. So in fact, it's contrary to what one expects from Salman, the person.
Huh. That is fascinating. That movie, I just can't even imagine how you did it. 70 shooting days, 4 generations, 5 time periods, 3 wars. I think you had 19 principal actors, 120 something speaking parts, 3,000 extras. I think there was 15 newborn babies, plus some poisonous cobras and water buffaloes and an elephant. And yet, when we talked about that movie, you told me that the biggest challenges for you were scenes, for example, where 8 family members were in a room and you were trying to figure out how to capture all of their reactions, how to navigate, again, just that human face. So what I'm trying to get at here is I think that what I might perceive as a challenge is different from what you perceive as a challenge. The big stuff doesn't seem to scare you.
Oh, not at all. It really doesn't, because that's about organization, and then it's like, okay, you have a jigsaw puzzle and somebody has done the outline, and then you just pick up the pieces which are very obvious and you say, okay, this might fit there, but the work has been done for you already in the organization of big scenes, because that's what the 80s do, and you can tell them, this is what you want, and then they can do it. And you walk in there and it's, or I walk in, and for me, it's like just taking a glass and saying, actually, this should be here, or we don't need one. Or so it's about the details, because the big scenes can be very empty, but there has to be something that's human that can connect you to it. And that is the challenge. It's not having 10 cobras or 10 tanks or something. I mean, that's easy stuff. It's how to make it relate to a human experience that's difficult. And that's challenging, and that's exciting. For me, that's exciting. To see where a helicopter lands, I mean, who cares? You just let it land somewhere. But who comes out of the helicopter? And how does that person come out of the helicopter? What kind of shoes is that person wearing? If the first shot that's important, that's exciting. But the helicopter landing in the middle of a war, I mean, it's easy. Yeah.
Huh. I love that. So I want to ask you then about Biba Boys. Why did you want to make like a gangster film? Like, I do feel like that's a little sort of crunchier and a little bit different, a little bit of a departure for you.
I think it has again a lot to do with uh, there's a line actually in Funny Boy which I wrote, and it's about this family coming from Sri Lanka and coming Tamil family coming here, and the mother says about her son to another son that he can be whatever he, now that we are free. It's about price of freedom. That yes, they're free to do whatever they want to, but they're free slaves. And what are free slaves? Free slaves are they're slaves of preconceptions of what we are like, whether we as for me as a brown person, and do I talk like Apu or Peter Sellers? Do I nod my head? Do I talk with an accent because that's what's expected of Indian people? The preconceptions are huge. Oh, of course you can't wear. I mean, I remember the first thing that I'll just digress. One of the things that when I first came to Canada, very nice young woman said, "Oh my God, you speak English so well." I mean, perfectly. When did you learn? And I said, "On the plane." And she said, "How wonderful." I mean, it's like, it's so bizarre. It's the lack of knowledge about the world. For the Western, I think for Western people, that's where it begins and ends, is their preconceptions and what they know or what they think they know. So they'll think automatically that I know yoga, or I love it, or I know how to meditate, or that kind of thing. So Biba Boys happened because of a very true story that was happening. So Indian men and women cannot be gangsters because for us to see ourselves being portrayed as gangsters is very difficult because we want to be liked by you white people. We don't want to create any controversy that we can be dark. I'm not talking about the color, I mean dark characters. And for white people, they feel that they're betraying their sense of liberal values by actually appreciating or not appreciating or that committing to themselves or even understanding that just because we are colored, we aren't all doing meditation. We come in different hues. They deny us our complexities. So when I read the story about Biba Boys, which is a real story of gangsters in the West Coast, that's what struck me. I just loved the fact that these were human beings. Like, I mean, if Martin Scorsese can make, The Irishman, why can't we have complex characters which are dark? And I think that is what attracted me. I think it's a lot like my other films, which is trying to explore what it means to be colored in a white society.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I was also really moved by, you mentioned your piece that you did for Apple TV, which is a segment of Little America, the series called The Manager, about a young teenager whose parents are deported from Utah, and he stays behind and runs the family motel until they return, which takes years. And again, it just struck me like the kids in cages at the border and all of this deportation. Your hero in that, it's very lighthearted in terms of the way the story turns out and the way the story is told. But underneath, it's such a dark story. I mean, your hero loses his childhood, and I think you convey that with that final shot. Were you particularly drawn to that little piece? Because as you say, you didn't write it. Was there something in particular that drew you to do that?
I think it's absolutely. I mean, I just love the undercurrent of. I mean, that's what I like in doing in films, is that there is like this whole world underneath which one can actually explore, but it doesn't have to be in your face, and it sort of reveals itself slowly that it's the losing of childhood is not a big dramatic moment with the violence out. It's a parent asking, and what's your life like? And he says, it's okay. That's all. And then you realize a huge tragedy of what he's been through. So exploring the undercurrents is what also I find extremely challenging. And I loved doing that. And I also learned a lot because I'd never, I worked with an excellent showrunner. I didn't, so it was, but who was actually said, do what you wanted to do, who just gave me the liberty to do it. And it was wonderful. I loved doing Leila for Netflix as well. I mean, it was totally dystopian, and it could be about what's happening today.
Well, I thought that about Funny Boy too, what's happening today, because I think, again, one of the themes that's in it, and I feel is in a lot of your work, is sort of what happens when good people do nothing. How easy,
Yep.
how close we are as humans to a kind of beastliness, and how important it is for all of us to look out for one another. Do you feel like this is the right moment for Funny Boy?
Absolutely. I mean, it was extremely important to me that the film come out now, because it is about now. It is about choices. It's about what's happening in the world, and it continues to happen. I mean, when are we going to stop? When are we going to stop actually a sort of train of prejudice and feeling so threatened by somebody who's different than us? And will we ever stop, dealing with it as if it was a token thing to do? I mean, how do we find out who's sincere and who's not? This is the moment. I mean, like they're friends of mine who are now on board members in the last 6 months of so many art organizations, and they weren't even looked at before. And we talk about it and we say, I wonder how long it will last. Is it like what you said earlier? Is it just of the moment because it's the politically correct thing to do, is to embrace everybody who's colored or indigenous or black, or will it change anything? And how do you make systemic changes? I mean, that's why Funny Boy is extremely important to me right now, because that's what it talks about.
At the screening, you sort of tossed off a line that you said, if this is the last film of my career, do you really think this might be the last film of your career? I hate to think of that.
I don't know. David laughs at it and he says that I say that after every film. But I think that, I don't know. I really don't know. I feel, maybe because I'm so tired, we just finished it recently, that and to try and finish a film in the middle of a pandemic is very stressful and challenging, that I just feel like, God, I need a holiday. I don't want to make another film because it's so difficult.
I predict that something's going to come along and get you all fired up again. I can't see that not happening. Okay, so I would love to talk to you all day, but I feel like we have to let people get back to their lives here. So my last question for you is, you are putting stuff out into the world. Like you're generating ideas, you're fomenting conversation. Like, can you put into words what you're proud of that you have been able to put out into the world throughout your career?
I don't know. I mean, I think that when you're a freelance filmmaker or whatever, and you don't work for somebody, your career and your personal life are really entwined. I don't think that, do you know what I mean? I don't feel that this is my career, this is my personal life, both for me as a filmmaker and as a woman and as a mother are all, or as a partner. David's partner is one intertwines itself into the other. And so if I'm proud of anything, I guess I'm really proud of my daughter. I really am. I mean, she's amazing.
That's a beautiful answer. And it's actually a lovely segue to what happens next with this award. I mean, part of this Visionary Award is that you get to pay it forward a little bit. And you have chosen as your pay it forward person, Agam Darshi. And I hope that you can just take a second, Deepa, and tell us about why. And then maybe Agam wants to come on and say hi or say a few words. Tell us why you made this decision, Deepa.
I had the pleasure of working with Agam on Funny Boy. Agam, and I got to know her. And she's an amazing, amazing actor. Okay. She's an intelligent actor, which is, you don't necessarily, talent and intelligence don't necessarily have to go together. But when they do, it's like, oh my God, it's wonderful. It's magic. And she is one of those rare people. And I like her. I like the way she thinks. I like the way she is thoughtful. I like the way in the middle of a really difficult scene, and she had tears in her eyes, and I said, Agam, are you okay? She said, I'm missing my sons. And I just thought, she had me from that moment, because that is what I was talking about earlier with you. What am I proud of? I'm proud of my daughter. For me, what we can do with our children, they do for us, what we do for them, and how we grow together. And those are human moments. And for me, that was such a beautiful moment with Agam. But the reason I want to pay it forward to her is because I read her script. She is going to direct her first feature. And very reluctantly, I had to twist her arm to send it to me, but I did. And she sent it to me. And I just loved it. It's called Indians in Cowtown. And it's funny, and it's warm, and it's about women. It's about one woman, and it's about family. It's about trying to fit in. And in Cowtown, come on, Indians in Cowtown. And it's so hilarious. I thought, my God, this kid is super talented, and whatever I can do to help, I'd be honored to. So it was like a no-brainer when DGC said that they had, whatever, money they had, that who would I want to give it to? I said, Agam, absolutely. What a brilliant script. And I know she's going to be brilliant because the way she thinks. So,
well, yay. Congratulations, Agam. I don't know if you want to say hi or anything at this moment.
Sure. Hi, Deepa. How's it going? I'm speechless. Actually, this is a huge honor. I've dreamt about working with Deepa for so long as an actor, and so to not only get to work with her, but to get to work on that particular story, on that particular character, and now this just feels very overwhelming and very. I don't know. I feel like I'm in a very lucky, sweet spot, and her view on me and her just her friendship and her mentorship has been just very grounding, actually, as a filmmaker, to know that I have somebody to look up to know that hard films can be made, to know that strong women are out there, and I have one in my court. I have goosebumps. So thank you so much. Thank you to the DGC, and thank you so much to Deepa.
Oh, well, so here's welcome. To our next visionary. Congratulations. I'm just going to wrap us up here. And I hate to say goodbye to you all, but I want to thank again the Directors Guild of Canada, the St. John's International Women's Film Festival, the CBC for the tech. Thanks all of you out there. Again, wish we could be with you in the real space one day soon. And thank you, Deepa. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Agam. Thank you, Johanna, so much. You're really good at what you do. So that's great. Thank God.
Well, right back at you, babe. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.